I'm going to start my talk today by introducing a new instrument that hopefully will be relevant to everyone in this room. And this is called the Benevolent Childhood Experience Scale. So Benevolent Childhood Experience and Scale. I'm going to show you in a second what this looks like, but I just want to give you a little bit of background. This is a measure that we developed specifically to parallel the ACEs questionnaire that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. This measure is very brief to administer and is comprised of 10 items that are intended to assess positive childhood experiences pertaining to perceived internal and external safety and security and a positive and predictable quality of life. I have a lot of colleagues in here who inspired the development of this instrument, including Jennifer and Amanda. This was modeled after the PACEs instrument, as well as Michael Unger's amazing child youth and resilience measure. So similar to these measures, the BCEs, we call it BCEs with ACEs and BCEs, is intended to assess positive experiences, but specifically be about what was available to adults when they were growing up as children. So it doesn't hinge as much on things that they had to do or capacities they had to have, but really what was available to them in terms of resources and positive experiences, specifically for adults who grew up in contexts of adversity. And this instrument was also specifically designed to be cross-cultural and sensitive for individuals who may have grown up in rural or underdeveloped regions of the world, so not specifically just in the US. Okay, so here's what the measure looks like. So it is 10 items. You can see what they involve. It's very brief to administer, and again, it's like the ACEs scale where you answer yes or no about whether each of these experiences was true for you growing up between the ages of 0 to 18, and then there's a total score. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the data that we have so far. I also want to say that this measure has been translated into 4 languages so far. Okay, so a few findings just to kind of give you some background on what we found so far. So in a paper that was published in Child Abuse and Neglect, Michael Unger was the editor, and I've thanked him very much for helping my career on this. Higher levels of BCEs we found predicted pregnant women's lower levels of PTSD symptoms and fewer stressful event exposures during pregnancy, even after accounting for ACEs. And I also just want to point out in this particular sample that we looked at how women with higher levels of BCEs were protected even when they had high levels of ACEs. So we found that women who had high levels of ACEs, so around about 5, but also reported high levels of BCEs, about 9 out of 10, had significantly fewer symptoms and stressors than women who had high ACEs, but lower levels of BCEs. And lower levels is about 5, and that's actually pretty low if you're only answering yes to half of those items that I showed, because the other half were never true at any time when you were growing up. So we want to really put these constructs together and understand how do BCEs operate in conjunction with ACEs. And I'm going to talk to you more about that today as well. And then a few other studies I just want to highlight that have also been published on BCEs. So in a separate sample of homeless caregivers, it was found that higher BCEs predicted lower levels of psychological distress, but higher ACEs predicted higher demographic risk. And so there's some evidence that ACEs and BCEs are operating separately and have differential effects. And then in another sample, and this is not a study I'm involved in, but I found it was interesting to see they used MCHART to recruit samples of community adults, and they found that higher levels of BCEs predicted more typically functioning adults, lower levels of stress and depression. So there's this kind of burgeoning research base on the BCEs scale, which is really promising. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of some new research that we're looking at that links the BCEs and the ACEs to angels and ghosts in the nursery. And I just want to ask quickly, how many people are familiar with the term angels and ghosts in the nursery? Okay, great. There's definitely some. This is definitely a topic that deserves more than 5 minutes. So if you want to talk more about this during lunch or sometime after, I'm happy to. But I wanted to give a little preview, and this study is going to be hopefully published soon in the new journal. You're seeing a lot of trees in this talk, and I just want to say I'm a developmental psychopathologist, and the tree is our hallmark symbol of development. And I study pregnancy right now in particular, and this really resonates with me, the developing tree, because I see pregnancy as a time when the roots of development are obviously emerging in utero as a new child is formed, but it's also a time when adults are, specifically those with trauma histories, are looking back at their own childhood roots and thinking about how was I parented, what experiences did I go through, and how do I want to be better for my kid. So it's a window when we can leverage resilience, specifically in adults who have trauma histories. Okay, so angels in the nursery, just a brief definition. We think of these as positive memories of loving moments with childhood caregivers that parents use as templates to recreate moments of loving care with their children. So this is a topic that I'm really passionate about. It's central to my research. And what I love about angels in the nursery, or angel memories, as I'm going to call them, is that while we can't change the experiences of the exposures that an adult had when they were a child, we can change their memories. Memories are malleable, and we can change the way that adults think about their childhoods and heal from them. So this is a really, really good intervention target. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we assess angel memories and give you some examples. Okay, so they're assessed on a 0 to 5 point scale. So we have an interview where we audio record parents talking about their memories, and then we score them on this scale. And this is not super important to know right now, but I'm going to give you a few examples of memories that we would consider to be higher on the scale, meaning they're stronger, or lower on the scale, meaning they're weaker evidence that there's this positive memory that exists, at least in that point in time for that parent. So here's an example of a memory that would receive a high score. So the opening prompt to assess these memories is, do you have a memory of a time when you were little where you felt especially loved, understood, or safe? And this woman said, yes, my grandma shared a room with me for a few years when I was 7 or 8. She was always there for me when my parents were not. On Sundays, if we couldn't make it to church because it was raining or it was too cold, we would just have church in our room and she would be a pastor. We would listen to gospel music and she would read the Bible to us. I remember feeling warm and cozy as I cuddled with her under the blankets. So this is a rich angel memory because it is not only very vivid and specific, but it has these sensory qualities where you can literally imagine this happening. There's this, tactile sensation of being warm and cozy, and it's very developed and vivid, okay? Here's an example of a memory that would receive a much lower score, and you will see why. So same opening prompt, and this mom says, well, those are things I never felt when I was younger, except being spoiled. But I was loved or safe. I always ran away from home, so I didn't really feel safe there. Birthdays were positive. I had good birthday parties when I was younger, like skating rink parties, barbecue parties, or just my birthday and my mom taking me out. I guess those were the best times. I was very spoiled. I was a mommy's girl. I always wanted my mom around, and even if she wasn't around, I can't go without my mom. I would always probably be bad or cry to make her come back. It was kind of difficult. So these are spontaneous recollections, and oftentimes when we ask this prompt, parents are like, oh, I've never thought about this before. And it's really interesting to hear kind of what comes out, and you can see this coexistence, this psychological warring in their head of I'm trying to think of a positive memory and I'm having these intrusions. Here we would rate this a little bit lower quality because it doesn't sound like it was that positive and it sounds pretty fleeting. So maybe on her birthday she felt really loved and special, but the context is giving us the impression that these moments were few and far between. Okay, so now I want to just tell you briefly about ghosts in the nursery, and we also call these ghost memories. So, because I'm guessing people are seeing, and particularly in the last memory I showed, we're seeing evidence of trauma reminders in the positive memory, right? Okay, so this is what ghosts in the nursery are. So these are intrusive memories of adverse childhood experiences that emerge as trauma reminders that we think, and conceptually, they're unconsciously transmitted to the next generation during situations that elicit reminders of the parent's trauma. So this is particularly when a new parent is tending to a baby and the baby cries, and the signs of distress from the baby remind the parent of their own distress when they were little and what happened to them when they expressed distress, like maybe they were rejected or they were abused or they were neglected or something. And so these distress signals from the infant then unfortunately elicit these memories of abuse, and then the parent is more likely to act in ways that they know, which were ways that are abusive. And so we see these ghosts in the nursery carried forward into the next generation unless we have an intervention. So here's some examples of ghost memories. We score them on a similar scale. We score them separately from angel memories because we know that they exist independently. So we don't want to penalize one for the other, right? So a higher score on the ghost scale means that the angel memory narrative is very, very flooded by trauma reminders. So here are some examples. So this is a higher score on a ghost memory. So the same opening prompt about a positive childhood memory, and this mother says, I think I had some good parents, but they just didn't know what they were doing. And they had a drug habit. So no, it wasn't safe. Because now, one time my mom and my dad owed this dude for some drugs. So the dude kicked down our door and busted our windows open. No, I don't feel safe because we live in a messed up neighborhood where they're shooting all day. Of course I don't feel safe. No, kids on the corner or down the street, across the street want to beat us up all the time. No, I don't feel safe. I don't know what safe feels like. I'm sorry, it's not safe. Nothing's safe. This is a very, very flooded angel memory that is characteristic of a high ghost score. Here's an example of a lower score. So this mother said, my dad would always bring me the most amazing presents. Once it was a bike, and he taught me how to ride it down the hill. We were both laughing. He would always bring me a special gift, and then he would leave. So this quality of like positive, vivid, laughing, good affect, and then this quality of he would leave, he would abandon me. And so as the listener, you're struck with this like, okay, there's mixed evidence here of ghosts and angels. And then here is the last example where we see high levels of both at the same time. And this is often the case when the person's angel memory reflects an experience where someone is saving them during a trauma experience or making something better when something very scary or frightening is happening. So this mother says, yes, with my brother. I remember one time when my mom had a friend who was a drug partner and he was trying to molest me as a kid. My brother prevented that from happening by simply coming into the room and saying, get off my sister, and yelling and hitting, and the guy ran out the door. And I felt that my brother loved me enough to try to risk himself to save me, and he was able to prevent the abuse from happening. Okay, so now that you have a basic sense of what angel and ghost memories are and how we rate them, I want to tell you briefly about a study where we looked at BCEs and ACEs as predictors of angel and ghost memories. So this is the first time to put all these concepts together. So our hypotheses are that higher levels of BCEs, so higher levels on the total score, would significantly predict higher levels of angel memories and lower levels of ghost memories during the prenatal and postnatal periods. So we're doing this in a sample of pregnant women and then following them into the postnatal period. Higher levels of ACEs would significantly predict higher levels of ghost memories and lower levels of angel memories during the prenatal and postnatal periods. So we're predicting that higher ACEs would predict these higher ghost traumatic intrusions, and higher BCEs would predict better angel memories. So just a quick overview of the sample. So this is pregnant women who were recruited from a safety net hospital in San Francisco, the San Francisco General Hospital. And they were under a lot of stress. About 19% of the sample reported that they were currently homeless at some point during the pregnancy. And we had them come in and we administered an interview for 2 hours that included a lot of narrative questionnaires, like the Angels in the Nursery interview. It was conversational. We audio recorded them with their permission. We administered the ACEs scale and the BCEs scale and several other instruments about psychopathology and stress and relationships and BCEs. So just a quick sample overview. So the age range was wide. We had some that were some that were teens when they were pregnant, 18 or 19, but then the sample mean was about 30. We had about a quarter of the sample monolingual Spanish speaking, and a very nice ethnic diversity of the sample, with the predominant three groups being white, African American, and Latina. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through the results. So in terms of ACEs and BCEs, we have a high level of all the individual ACEs, and we use the CDC ACEs items. And then we also had a high level of BCEs. So this signals a high capacity for resilience in this sample. So even though a lot of women had very high levels of adversity, they also had very high levels of positive childhood experiences. Okay, so just to show you the diagrams of our findings. So I'm going to kind of go through the path models just so I can get to the results quickly, because I think I'm running out of time. So we did a series of nested path models. I'm not going to talk about the results right now, but I'll show you the final diagram. And I want to draw your attention to two main paths. So the first one is that we found this path from BCEs to angels in the nursery during pregnancy to angels in the nursery at the postnatal period. And the effect from BCEs in childhood to angels in the nursery during the postnatal period went through angels in the nursery during the pregnancy period. So angels in the nursery, angel memories during pregnancy are basically accounting for the effect between BCEs and angel memories at 3 months postnatal when you have your baby and you're thinking about positive memories from your past to help recreate these positive experiences with offspring. Slightly differently, however,
She has a black button. Can you show it?
Slightly differently, however, we found that ACEs exerted direct effects both to ghosts in the nursery during the pregnancy period and ghosts in the nursery at the postnatal period. So higher levels of ACEs had these direct significant effects in influencing trauma reminders both during pregnancy and the postnatal period. Okay, so what does this mean? What are the basic conclusions? And then happy to talk more at the discussion time. We find higher levels of BCEs predicted higher levels of angel memories during the prenatal period, during the postnatal period through the effect of angel memories at the prenatal period. But we found that higher levels of ACEs directly predicted higher levels of ghost memories during both the prenatal period and the postnatal period, meaning that these trauma reminders are really strongly influenced by adversity that happened during childhood. So we didn't see crossover effects, which was really interesting. So BCEs predicted angel memories and ACEs predicted ghost memories. And we didn't see BCEs predicting lower ghost memories or higher ACEs predicting lower angel memories. So this shows that these are distinct pathways that are operating. So what does this mean for intervention implications? Pathways from ACEs versus positive childhood experiences, or BCEs, I think are fairly distinct. We often see that the correlation between the two is relatively low. These are separate experiences. So the presence of one does not preclude the presence of another. We need to be assessing positive childhood experiences. We know from the ACEs study that people who have high levels of ACEs only have a certain amount of risk for developing health problems in adulthood. There are so many people who have ACEs who don't go on to develop problems. And why is this? I think because they have high levels of positive childhood experiences, and this has not been assessed in the past. This is a huge part of the story that we're missing. We need to assess BCEs and use them to leverage resilience across development and over the lifespan. So I'm going to stop there, but if you want to talk further, please let me know. And if you'd like a copy of the BCEs scale, it's free to use. Thank you.